Welcome to the Be and Become podcast, the podcast where we redefine success from the inside out. Here we are going to be exploring the power of radical self-love, well-being, and the deeper meaning of success beyond external achievements. My name is Rebecca, and after years of chasing self-improvement, I realized that doing wellness isn't the same as being well. True transformation doesn't come from fixing ourselves. It comes from fully claiming and reclaiming ourselves to embody the highest expression of our soul's purpose and potential. So if you're tired of the endless chase and ready to step into a more aligned, empowered version of you, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome to another amazing episode of the Be and Become podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Bitton of Be and Become Consulting. Today, I'm with the founder of Leaders at Scale, Miss Mic Berman. She's had leadership roles all across the tech space, everywhere from Mozilla, Yahoo, Shopify, Wealthsimple, McKinsey Company, the list probably continues on from there. She's been coaching emerging leaders into greater leadership roles. Her reputation is built on trust, accountability to her clients' goals, and doing it all with her authentic, straightforward signature style. I am so grateful for Mic to be on the show. We've had some amazing conversations behind the scenes with regards to what is really high performance. How do we actually communicate it? How do we actually scale it? How do we do it in a way that is human first, that doesn't actually draw our teams to burn out? How can leaders actually effectively communicate their culture and scale that culture while still being an authentic leader that their employees and that their staff can really align with as well? So I'm so grateful for her to be here. Welcome to the show, Mic.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I'm excited about this topic. This is one of my favorite topics, and it shows up in coaching all of the time. And in fact, I had two coaching conversations about this topic today.
I'm so grateful. I definitely think it's one of the most, it keeps coming up on my radar as well. I find it's actually coming on both sides. I feel like I'm having amazing conversations with leading executives, CEOs that have come on this show. And I'm also on the complete other end of the spectrum in this demographic of our modern workplace with coaching my young professionals and helping them find their footing and find their aligned path. And so it seems like it's really this concept of revolutionizing the way we see success, the way that we actually prime our workplaces to be successful in a way that matters, in a way that is really championing humanity, empathy, a new style of leadership, a new paradigm of what success means, and how leaders can truly be not just champions of it, but also culture carriers of it. So we've definitely discussed this notion of culture and how to actually create a sustainably successful, fulfilling culture where everybody feels aligned. Everybody's hands are on deck in terms of their shared mission and what is expected of them, which is a big thing that we discussed before. Making sure that our employees actually understand what is expected of them and what high performance means. Because we all know that it means something different for every company, and I'm sure you've definitely seen this. What has been the definition of high performance or just performance metrics? Has it changed in all of these companies you've worked with?
Yes and no. So the number one thing is that most companies don't actually define it well. So they might say, like, we want excellence or we want high performance. And they don't share at a behavioral level, like individual behavioral level, what that means within that to support that culture, to grow that culture. And that's the real opportunity. So the opportunity is to say, we all want high performance and consistent high performance, and we want it ideally in a way that enables people to really thrive, to bring all of themselves, the best of themselves, to grow and lead and all of those different things. But what we don't do, what I've seen in different organizations, is they don't define it for their organization. So what I mean by that is, if we say it's excellence, we want, excellence from an engineering perspective or a product perspective. Do you want the holistic excellence? And are you building 100-year company, or are you building a 5-year or 1 year or to an exit or acquisition or to the public market? So depending on, like, one of the places I worked was Mozilla Firefox. They had 100-year vision. So they took a Japanese perspective around strategic planning, and they want to be around for 100 years and to be relevant. And so for them, that informed everything that they did, including from an infrastructure that, they had Brendan Eich there who had invented Java. Like they created great gifts and continue to create great gifts for the internet and for society at large. They pushed the privacy agenda before Apple's now gotten onto the privacy agenda and private browsing. So that was their view. Whereas if you're looking at, there's several high growth tech companies, and what they want in terms of excellence is product feature excellence. I want to attract customers. I want to offer something delightful and beautiful and elegant and all of those things. And that doesn't necessarily mean that care in the short term or even medium term about their infrastructure, their architecture, platform engineering, operations, any of those things. They just want customer acquisition in a way that delights the customer. And so there's a trade-off there. But if you're not being explicit, like Firefox was explicit about, we have a 100-year-long view, we care about these things. And so it informed how everybody showed up and the kinds of projects that they did. And in other companies, if you're not saying that, we want primarily to delight customers. I mean, nobody wants to say, so therefore we don't care about platform engineering or infrastructure or operations. But there's a trade-off. We value this more, and what that means. And at least it paints a realistic picture for the people that are involved and what they're going to do.
Yeah, it's almost like, it sounds like they almost have like their end goal in mind or their ideal in mind, but they're not, they seem to kind of have a disconnect in terms of, okay, but how do we actually get there day to day? Is that resonant?
Yeah, I think that the thing I would really like to offer whomever's listening, whether you're an IC, a leader, or an executive, if you can express the long-term mission, like Firefox long-term mission, we have a long-term vision. It's, we want to inform the web and so on, be relevant, etc. So express your mission, express your key values. Everybody has key values. Usually it's trust or integrity or authenticity or excellence or, whatever the normal language is. But then translate that into what is the behavioral norm you would expect from an IC manager or executive. What trade-offs would they make? What would their day-to-day look like? Okay, someone's just shown up with, mental health concern, or they're sick and they've got a core deliverable. Is this the kind of place where you're like, I don't care. Oh, by the way, am I allowed to swear on here?
Yeah, go ahead.
You might say like, I don't give a fuck whether or not you've got a problem at home or anything. Like, this is the deliverable. We have to get that done. This is the way that this, like, that's the behavioral norm. And in another place, they might say the behavioral norm is, man, that's really rough. Thanks for letting me know. Have you passed on your work? Like, how can I support? Do you need to go right now? Like, whatever. So like, there's two versions of that. However, whatever the version is that you want in your company, that's what I mean by a behavioral norm, is think of several scenarios that people would find themselves in. Performance management is a great one. Team management, goals, your craft, building your craft. What is your expectation at a behavioral level of the individuals that match that value statement that you have and that mission that you have? Of course, you also want to define the key goals and celebrate them and talk about them. Most companies do that already, but that's the thing that I'm talking about, is turn it into something that is relatable, that I know I'm doing this thing or I'm not doing this thing.
So important. And I feel like all of these words, they're so easy to use and they're so hot button and they're so like attractive, like, what are our corporate values? We want to be our value is transparency. Our value is honesty, whatever it is. And they kind of feel like this umbrella term, but they're not grounded in the day to day. It's like, okay, but how do we actually embody these things? And I think that's actually like a great connection to the ethos of the show, which is really about how do we actually become that? How do we actually become that as people? What is the character of this company? I know in our last conversation, I brought in this notion of, what is your company archetype? who are you as a company? I love to kind of do this exercise with my marketing students when we look at that famous campaign, with Microsoft and Apple. And Apple was played by this like young Justin Long, easygoing guy that was very approachable. And you had Microsoft, and he was this kind of, more button up kind of guy with the glasses. And he's kind of a nerd, but he's like a little bit outdated. And it really is a great way to think about, is this the kind of character that aligns with who I am? And I'm noticing, like, even with my younger professionals, they really, really thrive on transparency. And I think that grounding it in actual case by case situations and saying, hey, when this happens, this is how we work. This is who we are. If it's not in alignment with you, you need to keep moving on. And it's so I'm very grateful to hear this, because I'm hearing it, like, for example, we just actually had the CEO of the Sick Kids Foundation. She came on and she was actually highlighting this as well, that what we're moving into now is going beyond the resume and the skills and experience. We're looking for people. We're looking for the actual right people. And I think that matchup of, okay, so here's who we are. If our company were a person, what would this person feel like or act like or sound like? We talk about it in branding, but we need to have it touch all parts of the company. Like you said, in operations and communications, the platforms that we use. How can we make sure that that is integrated in every part of the company? Because it seems like if it's not everywhere, it's nowhere. That's the way I'm seeing it.
So the critical areas that you're going to want to look at that are your performance management, rate. Is that system clear and transparent? And what are your communication systems, particularly around progress, learning, and decision-making? And then for decision-making, how does the decision-making work? Do you, as an IC, have total autonomy over, or whatever your role is? Like, do you have complete autonomy over that area, so long as you're understanding and aligned with the mission and everything, because they're communicating it on a regular basis? They have all hands. They have, like, one of the companies I worked with, like FreshBooks, one of my favorite things is that we would open up the books, like at our all hands, you looked at the financials and we could see what was actually going on in the company, and people could ask any question. That part of it was voluntary. Like, it was not everybody's cup of tea to dive into the numbers like that, but Levi Cooperman ran a session for that. So transparency, to use that word, is really, it's so important. And so many companies think that they're doing that. So the two clients that I was mentioning earlier, one client, what she was saying is she heard that her 3 layers up, she was denied, like, she had a rating, her boss's boss, certain rating. And then when it got to the C level, they changed the rating. And she doesn't know why. Like, what, I was exceeds going into this, and now I'm meets. What's the context? What am I missing? Can someone tell me, how do I get to that next thing? And then the other client, what he was saying is his entire organization has decided we've got too many people who think that they're exceeds, but they're actually meets, or think that they're meets, but they're actually needs improvement, or whatever the things were. And so he said, whole scale, they're just making the bar higher. That's it. We're making the bar higher. And so I asked both of them, right? The obvious question, what have they told you? Like, what do you know? What's the thing that you can do differently? Have they given you any context? In both cases, no, they don't know. They don't know what the definition of excellence is, except that it's like some vague notion of do more faster, or deliver, like whatever, like shit that we're going to all make up, and we're going to default to that. And what I'm noticing right now, so it's, July 2025, whenever this gets published, in this current time, with what's the instability in the world, the economic, the tariffs, the this, the that, there's a lot of economic pressure. And so organizations, so think about the board members who are talking to the executive teams, who are saying, are you as productive as you can be? Are you leveraging your resources as fast? Are you, like, of course they're looking at, are you the lagging indicators? Are you hitting the goals? Are you getting these things? But that pressure is trickling down into the organizations. And so, like, the one saying, the bar has been raised. What's the new bar? We don't know what the new bar is. It's just higher.
Yeah. Yeah. Just be better. Can't you just be better? Can't you
And
just
so
be
it's,
better?
yeah, which means that what will hopefully not happen in that org, but the cynical side of me says, so what will end up happening is, who you know. Do you have a good relationship with the influencers at the table? The C-level person for this one engineer who got downgraded, do they have a good relationship with the C-level person? No. Does the C-level person understand, and why would they? And, they're sitting at a 3 layers down. Does the C-level person understand what that function is super well? No. So like,
Yeah.
so they're looking at, I want to move to another team or I want to move to another organization, which is what's going to happen. That's your consequence when you don't have that kind of transparency. What I loved about my experience at McKinsey Company at the time that I was there is it was crystal clear and it was beautiful. Like they had a behavioral observational scale. That's what you want, like norms. I mean, if I'm going to communicate super effectively at an excellent level, at my level, at the next level above me, at the level above that, what does that look like? And there was details and examples, and they had an up or out culture. So it was clear, you move up or you move out. It's not, there's no shame in that. And it is a brilliant strategy because their alumni become their greatest advocates. This was a great place to work. I'm going to send business people here. I'm going to send referrals here. I'm going to send my kids here when they, get to that age. Like, all of that happened because it was transparent and clear. That's what we're not doing super well. And I'm looking forward to listening to more of your podcasts, but this piece about the psychology of the leaders, if the leader or founder of the organization hasn't come to the level of, for lack of a better word, maturity or self-awareness around what they're good at, not good at. One CEO founder that I got to observe, him and his father at one point, just happened to be at a company event. And I could see the dynamic between the two of them. And then I was like, oh, this explains so much about what is said and not said in this company. And so the more, as leaders, our job is to work on ourselves, learn about ourselves, learn how we work, what we're comfortable with, not comfortable with. And then not in spite of that, but in concert with that, integrate that into the practice. And so we're still sitting at, 70% lack of engagement in companies because we're not creating the transparency. We've got shame around it, or stories we make up, or, people are afraid to have the hard conversation. People are afraid, like simple things like state your intention. You stated your intention at the beginning of this conversation, which made it so much easier for me to show up and go, great, let's have a conversation.
And you know what? I love this piece about self-awareness because, we're both coaches. We both understand that without self-awareness, it's already game over. Like there's no work to be done unless you're willing to say, hey, this is what I want to work on. This is what I'm not great at. This is what I'd like my team, maybe even to supplement some of the things that I'm not great at. That's kind of the point, right? Like we want to have people on our team that can fill those, those gaps or provide different lenses to a project, right? Like I love when we were looking at different kind of team dynamics, and I remember hearing about one that I particularly loved, which was called like the matrix model, where you had, basically like they do this a lot when they're building like a new car, where they'll have, the engineers in the, but also the marketing person is in the room, and they have like all of the different hats all together, and they integrate it because they want to produce something that's just amazing, and they need, the lens of everybody. And I love that model because it really celebrates people's individuality. And I think that's truly when people feel fulfilled, is when they really do feel like they belong, but they belong as themselves. I find a lot of the young professionals that I coach, even the entrepreneurs that I coach, like if something doesn't feel in alignment, it's usually because, they didn't get a chance to get to know them. They're not, they don't actually know their boss very well, and their boss doesn't really know them very well. And I feel like that lack of a bridge in coupling with this, increasingly high standard where it's like, I can't reach that. And you're not giving me a boost to reach that. So now I just feel broken. I had a client the other night who shared with me in confidence that her boss literally made her cry, like actually made her cry because he was just pushing her, and there was almost this feeling of like, it gave me this feeling of like this kind of men's locker room initiation kind of situation where they wanted to like, give her that kind of initiation or that grooming where it's like, well, it's kind of like you either get tough and you work faster and harder and better, or, it's not for you. And I don't really think that especially our new generation, which seems to be like a growing demographic. It's our fastest growing demographic. I don't think we're going to be generating or embracing their level of talent and potential because, they really do want to work hard. And I see them every day and they really want to give their best and they want to be their best. And I know that for myself, like this kind of one of the reasons why I started getting into mental health consulting, because I myself would also equate my self-esteem with how much I could provide and how much value I can bring. And that's a toxic place. Like it's not a secure place.
So this is the opportunity for people who are like the young professionals that you're talking to, or whatever stage of professional you're at. It's an opportunity to assess the place, and well, very hard to do because I've certainly been there. I've certainly had, situations where very upsetting at work and all of those different kinds of things, but it's an opportunity to go, wait, what is mine? What is theirs? What's not being said? And is this a place that is going to enable me to thrive? Because if it's a place like I've worked in, the stats are still the same, male dominated engineering centric environments, and some are very masculine, I would just say, like in their orientation without a lot of empathy or diversity. I'm not judging them. Be
Right.
who you are and, own that. And if I don't thrive in that environment, if it's an environment that makes me cry or gets me upset, or I feel like I'm not like, what's going on? Like, am I not as smart as I thought I was? Or like any of these thoughts going through your head, then look for what is mine, what is theirs, and what's, in between that's not being said. And it's perfectly like, if that's their environment and that's what they like, the McKinsey up or out, I thrive in that because I'm a driven person and I like the bar to be raised on a regular basis. But that doesn't work for everybody. For some people, and God love them, they want to master their craft and get that to be the focus and not be worried about the political landscape or this or that, or, what's the latest thing you've delivered for me, or, whatever. I just want to be amazing at the thing. And there are some organizations, like if I think about IBM or Procter and Gamble or some of the car manufacturers, they want people who are amazing at their craft. And they don't give a shit about, whether you're rising the ranks or becoming a VP or an SVP or an AVP or blah, blah, blah. They just want you to be really amazing at the thing. And so that would work really well for, right? So just invite people to, we're talking about high performance. Look at how does the organization communicate it? How do their systems match it? Is it when you're interviewing, when you're in the company, can you clearly see how we measure performance? Is it a clear system? Are there any questions? And how we onboard, offboard, and all the rest of it? If that is at all opaque, then you've already got some of your answer. And it's normal that it's opaque. 70%, it's normal that it would be opaque in the normal majority sense of the word. So then you have to start digging and figuring out is what is not being said, how they reward, what the behaviors are. Like a lot of engineering centric, or any cultures really, again, going back to Mozilla days, they brought in John Lilly, who was running the company at the time, brought in Bob Sutton, who'd written a book called The No Asshole Rule, because he didn't want assholes. Like, he's like, just because you're amazingly smart, it doesn't give you the license to treat everybody like shit around here. And that was core. And so he brought Bob in. We had a discussion about it as a mega team, like, this is not okay. And so, but other engineering, cultures or whatever, sorry, I've spent a lot of time in engineering cultures. They're like, the delivery is worth it to us. We'll tolerate the bullying, whatever, the lack of diversity of thought, because this guy or gal is super smart and that's valuable.
And you know what? I also think that it's not a character thing as well. Like I know that in my years of doing mental health coaching, I recognize that I don't think that people are, I mean, there are some people who are born driven and that's just that's always been who they are. But I also think that that's something that can be nurtured because I've seen in myself and in my clients that, they come to me in a place where they're vulnerable and they don't really have, a hell of a lot of self love or hell of a lot of confidence and they're beaten down by constant reminders of their insufficiency or constant reminders of how they're not measuring up in some form of their life. And some of these people are incredibly accomplished, by the way. Like it's actually incredible and that's why I'm so drawn to this notion of revolutionizing the way we see success because there's so many individuals that I would look at and be like, man, they're so successful and yet they're not happy and they're not, and they don't even feel successful. And I think that a lot of that comes from this sort of toxicity of high performance. And I think that if we allow people to feel valuable and we allow them to recognize that, hey, you got something that maybe we don't have. Everybody, I really do believe that everybody has gifts and value. I believe everybody has value. I believe everybody can learn from everybody. Personally, that's just my own value system. And I realize that so long as we nurture that and recognize like, hey, I recognize that you've got an amazing sense of humor. That could really help our team right now. Or hey, like you have lived experience with this. I think our clients would really relate to that or resonate to that. Maybe we should put that in our marketing messaging, or maybe we should have you be client facing. Like we need to recognize that, as long as we allow people to feel seen in the gifts that they have, they will rise to be driven. They will rise to be those kind of cutthroat, success-oriented high performers. I think that we can truly nurture high performers without beating people in the head with it.
And I think that it is absolutely the responsibility of the manager or the leader to figure that out. It is your job to understand what is the context I'm playing in, the project that I've got in front of me, and who are these beautiful people that that I've got on my team, and how can I draw out, enable, foster, coach, all of those things, these amazing people into greatness. That's that's really the job of the leader and the manager. And you can't, if you hear yourself, like you can't, I'm complain about, like look for what is the context and then draw it out and enable it. I agree with you 100%.
Would that come off as like soft in some of these places that you've been in? Like if we were to actually lead with empathy or maybe even like, dare I say, forgiveness and, give people a break, like, would that be, is that still like a expression of weakness?
The soft part is if you're not willing to do the hard thing about it. So one of the leaders that I was talking to today just joined a team and has discovered that they've got basically, they thought they would have 12 weeks, like a quarter to get shit going and so on, but they've got 5 weeks. In 5 weeks, looking around at the table and who's there, the hard conversation is, you're amazing and you've got great potential, but you don't have what I need right now on this project and this team to accomplish this thing. So I'm going to move you to another team, or, worst case, you have to move them out of the organization. But like, you have the hard conversation that goes along with it. And that hard conversation. So to me, the soft part is if you're not being the difficult kindness, the radical candor, if you will.
Yeah. It's like tough love. It's kind of tough love, but it's direct.
This is direct, and with all the context, this is what's going on in the organization. This is what this team needs. I can't afford as a leader to invest the amount of time because we've now got a shorter time frame, but you're amazing. And I'm going to help you in every which way in your career and mentor you and introduce you and blah, blah, blah. Like, you're not going to treat them like shit and kick them out, but you're going to be like, you don't have what I need right now. Or, the other parts of like, you're not, this is as far as your aptitude can go. Like I don't know what's blocking you, but like, that might be get therapy or get psychology or whatever. Or maybe you just really, that's not what you want. Like those are the conversations you want to have with people is here's the reality. Now you can, if you want this, 100% with you and we'll do it together. You don't want this, that's okay. We'll find either another thing in the company or, I'll support you to find other work. Like you don't have to be an asshole in it, but you do need to be that. So the soft part, like the soft part is if you don't deal with it. And to me, the worst part is the blind side of like, you're not honest. And so the person gets outed or moved or whatever, like what was happening to this engineer. Well, why? Like, can you explain it? Give me something I can work with. Because like you said, they want mastery. We all want mastery and excellence and to win.
Well, we all want to win. There is no compromise of winning. Like we live in a competitive world. We live in a competitive landscape. We need to win. I think it's just a matter of, maybe we need to kind of reframe what that winning looks like.
I was just going to say, like, I'm not comfortable with, we just need to win. This is where the FOMO and everything, like win for you might be independently wealthy. Like I remember that earlier on, so many people had a number. I got to get to this number. And that was success for them, whatever. Other people, I want to have a great family life. I want to have a rewarding career and a great family life. At this stage, I want to coach, people who want to be coached, who want to grow and learn. And I also want to, run my organic farm and have enough time in the day to go out in the garden for several hours, especially in the spring, summer, and fall. So like, that's my definition of success. Other people might be like, you're crazy. That's not what, like whatever. This is the thing. Yeah. Ultimately, we've all got to, which I think what I love about the name of your show, be and become. Be where you are. Acknowledge here is how I am, who I am, how I'm showing up, and what do I want to become. Maybe I'm good to be in the here and the now and in this way, but maybe there is something I really want to get to. So many people show up with like, I really want to get to the VP or I really want to get to the SVP or they got a title, and invariably I'm like, let it go. That is not. Not,
I still remember when I used to consult business owners on business strategy and branding. And I always ask, like, what is your actual intention for your brand? Like, what is it that you want to be? What kind of brand archetype do you want to be? Do you want to be a thought leader? Do you want to be a disruptor? Do you want to, be the genuine, like, everyday person kind of brand? Like, what is the actual intention? And they all said, well, we just need leads. Then I'm like, all right, well, why do you need leads? And they're like, well, we want to just make more money. And I'm like, cool. So why do you want to make more money? And they always looked at me like I was coming from Mars. And I'm like, no, I'm actually very serious because, if you're looking for, scalability, that's going to need a different strategy. If you're looking for a bunch of volume and you want to be like a Dollarama brand where you have like tons and tons of clients, but the dollar price point's really low, or like I had an executive consultant was the opposite. He didn't want a lot of clients. He actually didn't want a lot of leads. He wanted very specific, high caliber leads. And that takes a totally different strategy. So it's all about being essentially very clear on what your intention is. And I think that that's exactly why we're on this path in this, in this brand and in this business of, allowing people to be very aware and on an individual level and an organizational level, what is success for you? Because if you don't know what it is and you're following another person's definition, or maybe you just want to follow the story that your father wanted you to do or your parents wanted you to do. Like I've coached people that are doctors and they went all the way. And they woke up one morning, they're like, I don't want to do this at all. I don't even know why I'm here. I'm like, we all have seen it when people are in the wrong roles, or like they've worked so hard to get somewhere and they're like, they look around and they're like, why am I here? Like, how did I get there? Like, how did I get here? And so that's why I'm really happy that I'm seeing more and more conversations around what brand of success are we going after and what brand of person do we need that is in alignment with that success, and recognizing that, hey, if you're not in alignment, it's not an evaluation of your value. It's an evaluation of your fit. And I know a lot of people hate that because they're like, oh, they get this, corporate speak of, oh, well, you're not the right fit. And it's like, well, I want to be the right fit. What is the right fit? Like, what is the fit that I'm trying to get into? And it's just very interesting to see this new generation that, maybe our older generation wanted to just please their boss so that they can keep their job. And now I'm seeing this newer generation where it's like, no, I want to be a part of something bigger than myself. I want to belong somewhere and, be in an environment that supports my, my highest growth. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes that's why I said earlier, the understanding who you are, that's the being part, and figuring out what's important to you about that growth path that you're on or the organization. And just remembering in the moment when that alignment is not congruent, you can feel the lack of alignment. It's like, oh, let me get curious. What's here? Before we move into judgment, like it's my fault, it's their fault, whatever. Let's just get curious for a minute. What's really here? And what does that mean for me? And the choices that I'm going to make? And what does it mean as a leader for the team or, for the organization? And the more transparent and leveraging story around that, right? Like, what is it? What are the examples of it in a relatable story? The examples of the mission, the examples of a successful goal, the example of the behaviors that you want people to, the character of the organization, as you said earlier. That is what you want to really look for and understand as an individual. And so it'll define your own success and the success of the team that you're running or the success of the broader organization.
Love that. So well, I think that's a great way to close in terms of our biggest principles is get very, very clear as an individual and as a leader and as an organization. What does success truly mean for you? And more importantly, like thinking about, yes, we have our long-term vision, but actually creating actionable examples so that people can play it out and role play, dare I say, like actually role play these scenarios and see how they feel and see if they truly align. Couldn't be more critical for engagement. As you said, we're looking at 70% that are suffering with low engagement, low retention. It's really, really a huge wake-up call. I want to thank you so much for being on this episode with me and riffing on all these important, timely topics. A wealth of wisdom, wealth of insight, and just so super fun to just have you on the show. Thank you so much, Mick, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on another episode of the Be and Become podcast. Again, I'm your host, Rebecca Bitton, and we'll see you next time. Be well and be your highest self in alignment with your chosen success. All the best to you, and we'll catch you on the next episode.